Outside a Jakarta court, a motley mix of nationalists mingle with street thugs, military veterans, even a local rock star. They're all here to fly the flag for Eurico Guterres, fated in Indonesia but reviled as a war criminal in East Timor. Here, the cult of celebrity upstages the rule of law. But this is bogus justice, a clumsy Indonesian attempt to appease international outrage. Well, may he look smug, as Guterres is not before the court in Jakarta on major crimes against humanity. He's on a minor charge for ordering his militiamen to snatch back some weapons they'd previously surrendered.
Karena saya adalah warga negara Indonesia, berhak untuk mempertahankan harga diri dan berhak untuk mempertahankan kedaulatan wilayah Indonesia dari ancaman dan ronrongan, baik dari yang datang dari dalam maupun dari luar itu sendiri.
Now living under so-called house arrest with his wife and young family, he's insisting that, like Journeyman, he's guilty of nothing more than fighting for his country.
Tapi kehadiran pemerintah Indonesia untuk semua rakyat Timur, saya berjuang karena saya melihat kejahatan sana seperti itu dan saya harus berjuang dong. Kalau saya tidak berjuang lalu sana berjuang dibenarkan, saya berjuang tidak dibenarkan, kan mana keadilannya kan begitu.
But Guterres' version of justice is not recognised in East Timor. It's unlikely he will ever face trial for his role in 2 brutal massacres. Politics has intervened to allow him and many others identified in this report to avoid their day in court. Many accused of the worst of crimes now hide inside Indonesia, arguing that they only acted as patriots to the Indonesian cause.
Patriotism and murder are incompatible. He had every possible facility to spread his gospel among the Timorese people. The fact that they voted overwhelmingly against his ideal certainly did not entitle him to use force, violence, and behave in a criminal fashion against his own brothers and sisters. That's not patriotism. That's a major crime against humanity.
While key players search for a face-saving solution, in this Dili graveyard, investigators from the United Nations Serious Crimes Unit are digging up the dead again.
All the bodies buried here as a direct result of the violence of '99.
Despite their commitment to their grisly task, there is frustration at the UN's slow response. That these exhumations are still happening more than 18 months after the killings represents a failure by the United Nations to run down serious war criminals at all.
At the moment, there aren't the resources, the competence or the political will for the UN to be able to deliver on justice in these terms.
While the United Nations refuses to confront Indonesia, the perpetrators of crimes walk free, the rights of the victims and their families ignored. In truth, the real victim in East Timor is justice itself. October 22, 1999 was an emotional and bittersweet day for the people of East Timor as they welcomed home their hero, freedom fighter Journeyman. Journeyman spent 17 years fighting a guerrilla war to win independence from Indonesia. This was his first day back in Dili, East Timor's ravaged capital, having spent the previous 7 years locked up in Jakarta.
Follow the
For all the emotion and triumph, it was a day tempered by anguish. Few, if any, of these people have been left untouched by the brutality of Indonesia's military or the militia they created. Justice is a raw issue here. The scale of the crime so vast, the evidence so palpable. James Dunn is the UN Special War Crimes investigator in East Timor. He believes the number of people killed is double the original estimate of 1,000.
I have to say that what I found most disturbing in this whole investigation was not just the killings, it was the brutality that accompanied almost all of them. People weren't just killed, they were brutally killed. And so often the bodies were mutilated. One particularly vicious case near the border where two young women who were pregnant, they came across them, they couldn't have had anything against them. They knocked them down and actually cut open their abdomens and removed. I mean, while these women were alive and dying, removed the fetuses and just threw them aside. I mean, it's just such callous brutality. It was profoundly shocking to me.
But only a very few perpetrators have been brought to book. Justice has been delayed. While the chief of the United Nations mission in East Timor asked the UN for extra resources, only one country offered funds. None offered people.
Was it a failure of the international community of member states? Probably yes. Was it our failure? Probably yes. But the fact remains that the Serious Crimes Investigation Unit did not have sufficient people, sufficient investigators to do a better job.
Only a few months ago did the UN create a panel of international and East Timorese judges to hear the first and meagre list of crimes to be prosecuted. These men are here to answer charges of crimes committed in the district of Los Palos. But human rights watchers know that these are only the small fry.
There will be some trials of people who have been held in detention for over a year for the occasional murder or rape or whatever, but it would be very surprising if there were any significant militia leader who were convicted of mass destruction or of multiple murders.
It's not just militia leaders who are accused of atrocities. Their mentors, the Indonesian military, also remain out of reach. Colonel Tono Suratman was the leader of the Indonesian army in East Timor, hailed as a hero by his own disgraced troops. He's accused of raping this woman, Nancy Sancha Nascimento.
Sempre hanuin kon hanuin to ada pe buat lebih terjadi bahan di sini. Kon terjadi bahan di sini buat lebih sini hal bahan ni sahaja laran moras tertewis.
The wife of a key militia leader, she believes she was assaulted as an act of retribution after her husband deserted the cause.
Well, these have to be investigated, of course, but there have been several reports that he was involved personally in sexual assaults. I can't say any more at this stage.
But do you find it credible?
I find it credible.
Although Suratman denied the allegations, he's one of 23 suspects named by Indonesia to appear before a local human rights inquiry. An inquiry that's yet to get off the ground. And he's since been promoted to Brigadier General.
Basically, Indonesia's approach has been the classic one of a sovereign saying that we're not going to give up any of our people, and what goes on next door is basically not a matter of concern to us.
But doubtless the major crime against humanity is to be found in Indonesia's own backyard, where as many as 100,000 East Timorese refugees remain in camps like this one in Kupang, the capital of Indonesian West Timor. More than 18 months after many were forced at gunpoint to leave their homes in East Timor, they remain bargaining chips for militia leaders, as heinous a crime as their detention continues to be.
The forced displacement of civilian populations is one of the most serious crimes. As a matter of fact, it is also punishable under the Geneva Conventions of 1949 that establish basic rules in times of conflict.
But so far the UN has been unable to act. Last year, when 3 of its staff were hacked to death, they ordered all of their workers to abandon the refugees and leave West Timor.
The United Nations lost 3 of its fine officers in Atambua in tragic circumstances, as you know. They were butchered. To request the United Nations to return to West Timor is not a serious proposition unless we can establish beyond any reasonable doubt that the Indonesian authorities have restored law and order and have regained full control of that territory.
One of the few groups providing support is the Catholic Church through the Jesuit Refugee Service. It's been calling on the UN to return.
Illness is spreading rapidly, there are no doctors, and food is in shorter supply. So what you have is a situation which is desperate.
Kami minta dengan hormat atau mohon dengan hormat supaya untuk LSM internasional supaya masuk kembali di sini untuk menangani masyarakat pengungsi asal Timur Timur, karena masyarakat pengungsi asal Timur Timur ini kami sangat membutuhkan lembaga atau LSM internasional karena
Jose Gomez Baptista is a militia leader, also with blood on his hands. He claims there's now no danger to international aid workers. He and his men will guarantee their safety. While Jose does not want to go back, other leaders are trying to cut deals.
Obviously they will not return unless they cut a deal whereby it's understood that upon their return they will be given immunity from prosecution.
One such militia leader is Cancio Lopez de Carvalho. He's been linked to the Sawai massacre, where at least 200 people were killed.
He was a charismatic leader in his area. He was a powerful man, and he currently controls probably 6,000 to 8,000 refugees, and that's why people are prepared to talk to him, because it's the 6,000 to 8,000 and they're coming home that's important.
But Cancio's not going to allow them to go home without an amnesty. The UN has opened negotiations with him, but insists he must be prepared to face the law.
Nah, kalau sekarang kita bicara dulu proses hukum, mungkin juga orang tidak mau pulang dan itu tidak menyelesaikan masalah. Makanya pasti ada tindakan-tindakan pelanggaran hukum di Timur Timur itu ada. Pasti ada. Nah, tetapi saya melihat sebelum ada satu proses peradilan, itu orang Timur itu harus berdamai dulu. Termasuk pengungsi itu harus pulang dulu.
But reconciliation has its limits, even in this most Christian community. The Sawai Cathedral, previously the site of one of the most gruesome atrocities, now houses informal classrooms. It's a community united in one belief, that justice must prevail.
Mai be lahos jadikan bahan bahwa awam bairua sirat jadikan bahan. Idene nudar ya hena mutinde em hal foer. Mabe sekar metim balaran. Odi hein emana be salana inne atu tomai para atorik tesiliane. Odi hamos.
When the people of Sawai were given the chance to be heard, they rejected the UN's reconciliation approach, claiming justice had to come first.
They're not prepared to forgive some of the more heinous crimes. They're not prepared to forgive murders that involve mutilation, the hacking of women's breasts or the cutting out of tongues. Those sorts of things stick very strongly in their mind. And they're not prepared to forgive mass murder, and they're not prepared to forgive activities that involved rape.
But the cold political reality is that they will be denied the justice they seek, lost to the vested interests of the militia leaders, and a lack of will on behalf of a UN held hostage to conflicting interests at the international community. Jakarta Guzman now sees the only possible course of action as a South African-style Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Não negamos justiça. Da forma prática, nós consideramos, se tivermos uns 3.000 milícias na prisão, quando nós necessitamos de professores, quando necessitamos de enfermeiros, medicamentos, escolas, estamos a alimentar 3.000 milícias. Isto é formas práticas de pensar.
But East Timor's spiritual leader, Bishop Carlos Bello, opposes reconciliation that does not include justice. He insists that those who have committed serious crimes must be made accountable for their actions.
When you find you meet women and you meet mothers that come to you explain, Bishop, I'm seeing in the road, those militias totally free, and they have killed my son. What about justice? So we are creating some climate of psychological disease in the Timorese people if we don't take these actions.
Australian Brigadier Ken Gillespie heads the UN peacekeeping operation along the hottest stretch of border between East and West Timor. He's concerned that the failure to achieve justice and reconciliation may provoke a new round of violence.
In some discussions that I had with Jakarta Guzman, he made the point that reconciliation and the election process had to be two separate processes, that we had to get reconciliation out of the road before we embarked on the political process, because if you didn't, there was the chance that some of the political process could be violent.
The risks are enormous in terms of violence, but also in terms of the prospect that there might not be the establishment of a legitimate nation state.
Captain, you can go a little bit forward.
Just days after we visited their camp in Kupang, this boatload of 500 East Timorese refugees returned to Dili. Their return was marked by suspicion and fear. Their future as uncertain as their country's transition to a peaceful democracy. With East Timor's first democratic election set for August, the need to reconcile the freeing of thousands of refugees still held in West Timor and the demands of the victims for justice is running to a very tight timetable.